oh, I only made that sale. I only closed that deal because I just got lucky. Anyone could have done what I did. It's really not that big of a deal. It can look like comparison to other. Oh, he has something that I don't. She has something that I don't. Oh, they're much more knowledgeable than I have. They have much more experience than I do. Always comparing yourself to other people. Yeah, I'm never going to be as successful as other people in the industry. Perfectionism. Oh no, I know I can't launch my business yet. That website's got to be perfect. The business card's got to be perfect. I'm not ready yet. Any Why? Because any mistake that I made will just prove that I'm not good enough, that I'm not cut out for this. Fear of judgment. What are my friends and family going to think if I don't succeed? People will think I'm foolish for even trying to run a business. We're casting judgment on ourselves and projecting what others might feel about what we're doing. Second guessing decisions. This is a big one. Did I make the right choice? Was I right to start a business? Was that decision the right one? Maybe I should have done things differently. I'm not sure if I'm making the right choices for my company. Internal criticism is the last one. And this is a big one. What is that internal voice that's inside your head on a day-to-day basis? Is it empowering or is it disempowering? I should know more by now. I'm so far behind. Oh, I don't deserve the success I've had. I'm just fooling everyone. So what I really love to hear from all of you is, first of all, in chat, put in, have you experienced any of these? Any of these particularly resonate with you? Put that number in chat. Number 1, number 2, number 6. Have you experienced any of these before? And if so, which one, resonates? Which one feels familiar? Take a minute if you can do me a favor and put that in chat. All 8. All 8. Thanks, Just Key Productions. I love that. Hey, you're being honest. 1 and 3 feel familiar. Self-doubt, undervaluing achievements. Yep, those are common ones. Thanks, Kimberly. I appreciate you guys sharing in the chat. Comparison is the thief of joy, but boy, do I experience it often. Absolutely, all of them. I'm an overachiever, but 2 and 5, 2 and 5 are a big one. To freezing and procrastination. 1 and 2, 3, 5, and 6. Thanks, Andrea. Thanks, Mary, Billy, Portia. Thank you so much. 3, 5, and 6 are big ones. Yeah. Undervaluing achievements, perfectionism, fear of judgment. Perfectionism, it seems to be a common one that's popping up. Okay. 6, fear of judgment. Yep. First of all, I thank all of you for being vulnerable and sharing. Yeah, hey, these are things I'm feeling, right? And that's the next point I want to make. Look, if you're experiencing any of these, you are not alone. You are not alone. And that's the first thing you should acknowledge. And look, if anything, if you can get anything out of this tonight, you're in a community of entrepreneurs that also experience the same doubts, feelings of imposter syndrome that you are. So it's just wonderful to be a part of a community of like-minded individuals that might be experiencing similar emotions to what you're feeling. 70% of people say that they experience imposter syndrome. And if I'm being honest, I honestly think that's low. I think everyone at some point in their life experiences one of those 8 manifestations of imposter syndrome at some point in their journey. And it is even higher amongst 3 different demographics: amongst women, minorities, and amongst entrepreneurs. I know what some of you are thinking. Oh, great, Dr. Ram, that's fantastic. I just check all of those boxes right there, right? But hey, it's okay. You're not alone. It is very common to feel these emotions. And over the course of today's presentation, we'll go over some of the things and tools that you can use to get over some of these feelings of limiting beliefs. All right, with that being said, let's get into the solution. First thing I'll say is that imposter syndrome, it's not a feeling. It's a common misconception. It's not a feeling. It's a series of irrational and illogical thoughts. And that's actually a good thing, because when you realize is that it's a series of irrational thoughts, then if you have the right tools and resources and mental kind of tools at your disposal, then you can slowly kind of undo and unravel those patterns of irrational and illogical thoughts. That's the beauty of this. We can learn some techniques to help us in those moments when some of those kind of negativity pops up in our brain. Before we begin, I'd really love to ask you, all of you, a question. If you want to come off mute, feel free to. Otherwise, you can put it in chat. I want to hear from all of you. Why do you want to become an entrepreneur? If you're not an entrepreneur already, great. Why did you choose to become an entrepreneur? If you're an aspiring entrepreneur, why do you want to become an entrepreneur? Let's take a minute to put that in chat. Or if you want to come off mute, I'd love to hear from you. And one thing to hear when I ask this question, I'd love to hear like crystal clear answers. Like, hey, I want to become an entrepreneur for financial freedom. Perfect. That's a great one. Right. And when I say crystal clear, someone, it's like, okay, well, I want to make more money. That's kind of vague, right? It's like, well, I want to make more. I want to hire a personal chef so I never have to cook a meal again. I would love to have the flexibility to be able to pick up my kids from school every day, right? Time freedom, location freedom. Great. Yeah, absolutely. Tired of impossible deadlines from employers, right? You're tired of other people setting your schedule, tired of other people dictating when you do what and when things are due. Desire to see myself reflected in the clinical trial industry. It's also a tax strategy that I want to pay off my student loan debt. Amazing. I feel I can help people more externally than internally. Okay. I love that, Billy, that you say that, because it sounds like you have a purpose behind what you're doing because you want to help other people, to share my gift of baking with the world. Oh, how beautiful is that? I'm getting tingled down my spine. Mary, thank you so much for sharing that. Continue family baking legacy. All right. You have a legacy within your family, a tradition of baking, and you want to keep that alive and well and share that gift of baking with the world and to others. These are all wonderful answers. I love that. Independence and freedom. Yeah, great. And hold on to these, because when we do our exercises later in a few slides, I'll ask you to revisit some of these. So jot this down, keep it in the back of your mind, and we'll reuse some of these thoughts. Okay, let's get right into number one. First solution to help you overcome this illogical thought pattern of imposter syndrome. It's fill your cookie jar. I'll explain what that means in a minute. So here's an interesting thing. When we look at the world's largest study of high performers, people that we know are high performers, they've succeeded in life. They're high performing both on a personal level and in a career level, on a financial level, etc. The world's largest study on the world's highest performers, they ask the question, where do you derive your confidence from? Where do you get confidence from? And what they found from this study was the fact that confidence doesn't come from acquiring a past skill in a specific area. It doesn't come from competence in a specific domain of knowledge. Rather, it comes from one's own ability to trust that you can learn and gain future confidence despite challenges or setbacks. Meaning that in the face of adversity, in the face of challenges, in the face of setbacks, they have confidence that they can navigate those situations and adapt and learn and adapt to the changing environments. So what they found was it's not tied to a specific competency, but rather it's tied to the belief that they can adequately handle challenges in the future, even though they had no experience. So I'll give you an example. I have a cousin of mine that he is a computer programmer, and he spent 4 years mastering a particular computer programming language. And he started practicing. He was very good at what he did. He started programming in that language. After a couple of years of doing that, he saw the writing on the wall. It turns out that there was a brand new, fancy, cutting edge computer programming language that came out. And it became clear to him that his knowledge of his old computer programming language was going to become obsolete. So I was talking to him during that time. I was like, are you bummed out by this? Are you like completely shaken by the fact that this language that you spent so many years mastering is going to become obsolete? And he said, no, I just have confidence. Hey, I'll just learn the new language. I'll adapt. So he wasn't phased by that, but rather he knows, hey, the industry that he works in is dynamic, and he also has to be dynamic as well. He has to respond to changing marketing conditions. He had the confidence in knowing that despite challenges, despite setbacks, that he can adapt to the changing marketing conditions and he can learn this new language. That's where true confidence comes from. It's in knowing that I have the ability to learn and to adapt, trusting yourself in those situations. There's this powerful concept called the power of yet. Though the imposter says, I don't know what I'm doing. It's only a matter of time before people figure me out. But those that have overcome this, those with a growth mindset say, I don't know what I'm doing yet. It's only a matter of time before I figure it out. That's where true confidence comes from. So that's what I challenge all of you is to continuously build your own self-belief. Look for evidence that you're doing the right things. At the end of each day, ask yourself what went right today. Too often we do the opposite. We're in our own heads, laying in bed of all the things that went wrong. But I guarantee you, if you think back, what went right today? What did I do well today? I'm really proud of the way I carried myself in this conversation. I closed the sale today. I'm really proud of the way that went. Hey, I got in a difficult conversation with my 10-year-old today, and I'm proud of the way that I handled myself. Continuously build your self-confidence in reflecting on things that went right, not the things that went wrong. It's important, hey, of course, to reflect and to learn and to adapt from the things that we did that could have gone better. But again, also pat yourself on the back for the things that went right. Gain confidence in your ability to execute. One of the things I say to myself every morning is I believe in my ability to figure things out despite challenges and setbacks. And when I face a challenge, when I face a setback, that mantra comes up. I believe that in myself that I can figure this out. So I'm going to ask all of you to join me in an exercise to build your highlight reel. What I mean by fill your cookie jar. We all have days that we wake up on the wrong side of the bed, me included, where you're just feeling off. You're not feeling yourself, right? In those moments, what do? One of the best exercises I love is reaching into my cookie jar. And comes from a person named David Goggins. He's a Navy SEAL. He has these days as well where he's not feeling his best. There are some moments in my life that I am super proud of, that the way I carried myself, the way I executed, I add those moments into my highlight reel, into my cookie jar. These are moments, these are cookies that when I'm feeling self-doubt, when I'm not feeling my best self, I reach into that cookie jar and remind myself of these highlight reels. No, hey, the doubting self isn't me. The person in that cookie jar, those moments, that's who I am. I'll ask you as I'm talking to think through of some of those moments in your life. I'm really proud of the way I executed on this presentation in this particular moment. I'll give you one example in my life that's in my cookie jar, and I'll give you a silly example as well. Part of my job in my role is I get to speak to brand new employees at my job. And when I speak to those brand new employees, it's a 2-day onboarding experience. And at the end of it, I'm given about 5 to 10 minutes to give some closing thoughts, inspirational kind of closing thoughts for them to carry on with them, that they can carry with them for the rest of their career at my company. And this last time I had the opportunity to do that, man, everything was just rolling off the tongue perfectly. And man, I was feeling myself. It was great. Guess what? I added that moment to my cookie jar. That's part of my highlight reel. I'll give you a silly example. Yesterday on campus at my workplace, we had a social gathering, and we had a Connect Four tournament that had these giant Connect Four things. And I won 6 games in a row. I couldn't lose. I don't know what was going on. Man, I was feeling myself. I was on top of it. I was like, man, this is awesome. 6 games in a row. Guess what? I added that moment to my cookie jar. I added that moment to my highlight reel. And I'll give you one last one is is moments like these. I love these opportunities to connect with aspiring entrepreneurs, being an entrepreneur myself. And this is in a moment that I'll add to my, highlight reel as well. Being able to connect with wonderful people like all of you. At work, we have these things called kudos, where if someone does a good job, I can write them a little kudos and it sends it this nice message to them and to their manager. Anytime I get a kudos, I add it to a folder on my desktop. And it says literally a folder on my desktop that says cookie jar. And if I'm having an off day, it's a great opportunity. Double click that folder and look through these moments of where people appreciated the work that I did. What's in your cookie jar? I love that. Yeah. Now I'm going to ask you, think back to your careers. Think back to your entrepreneurial journey. Think back to something from your childhood. What is something that you're proud of? I'd love for you to come off mute and share with us. What is something in your highlight reel that you're particularly proud of? Maybe it's a way you showed up for a friend. Maybe it's a way a friend or a family member was having a tough time and you showed up for them. That could be part of your cookie jar, right? You made a sale that you didn't expect to make. That could be part of your cookie jar. I want to hear from you. What's part of your cookie jar? As you're sharing your moments, I'll share another story with you. A friend of mine, she was a computer programmer and she'd moved to New York City and was working for a startup company. She was on a team of 20 other computer programmers and she was the only female. And she felt like a lack of confidence that she was showing up. She was an imposter and she didn't feel like she belonged. And she was constantly feeling like she had to prove herself. And someone told her this message: well, fake it till you make it. Fake your confidence. And then so she followed that advice. She repeated this: I'm going to show up as confidence. I'm going to fake it until I make it. Until I make it. And unfortunately, that didn't work for her because she felt like she was showing up and she was being fake. So she replaced that with another phrase. And that other phrase was believe until you achieve. Believe until you achieve. Believe in your own abilities to achieve. If you fake it until you make it, you may never make it. But if you believe in your ability to adapt and to learn and to adjust to all the challenges and to move forward despite challenges and despite setbacks, then that's how you can gain true confidence. All right. Andrea said, packing up everything and moving temporarily to DC to support my sister and brother-in-law during the birth of their third child in 2020. Man, tingles down my spine. Thank you for sharing that, Andrea. I'm sure your brother-in-law and your sister appreciated that moment. I mean, I have two children myself, and that it takes a village. It takes a village to raise children, right? And I bet they sincerely appreciated all the help that you gave them during that time. Purchasing a townhome in a much sought after neighborhood all by myself. Congratulations. That is amazing. That is incredible, right? And I'm sure that wasn't easy. I'm sure that wasn't easy to do. I'm sure it wasn't cheap, right? But you did it anyway. That 100% deserves to be in your highlight reel. I'm most proud of establishing a trucking staffing company many years ago. It was my first successful entrepreneurial endeavor for that period of my life. Elle, thank you so much for sharing that. You did it. You did it. And you can do it again if you need to, right? Congratulations. Ron says, I started my state farm agency from scratch roughly 9 years ago. And after 2 years, it got awarded Best Insurance Agency in Dallas by D Magazine. Congratulations, Ron. 2 years in. Man, that is incredible. Opening an architecture firm 9 years ago. Congratulations, Theodora. I mean, that's a huge accomplishment, right? It took a lot of courage to do that. I'm sure you faced a lot of internal doubt and fear during that time. And you overcame that to successfully start an architecture firm. Being in business for 4 years as of May 2024, heading towards 5 years. Andrea, man, these are awesome. Top 40 under 40 by Dallas Biz Journal in 2022. How often do we spend time reflecting on how far we've come? And I guarantee you, for most of us in this room, it's not enough. It's not enough. Too often we think about how far we have left to go, but we don't stop and appreciate and look back to see exactly how far we've come. Taking a moment to acknowledge that you've done it. You've accomplished, you've persevered through challenges. These belong in your cookie jar. These belong in your highlight reel. And these are moments that we should revisit on a regular basis. And it helps us develop this true inner self confidence, the same true inner self confidence that the world's highest performers also enjoy. Being a first generation business owner, amazing. Amazing. You have probably don't have family members that also are business owners. You probably had family members that said, "What are you doing? Started, go get a job, go work for another company." That's amazing. That's not easy to do. All right, we're at step number one, guys. I hope you guys are enjoying this so far. Step number one. We still got 6 more left to go. All right. Hopefully, you got a lot of value out of step number one. Let's go to step number two. Okay. Reframe fear. Reframe fear. So what do I mean by reframe? Let's take a minute to understand what reframe means. Um, reframe. I'm sure I had this experience many times in college and maybe even my grade school. If it was school life, if you can take yourself way back to grade school or to college, you could probably think of an example of an exam where one question builds off of the other. That if you get the answer wrong to question number one, question number two builds off of the answer of number one, and three builds off of two, and four builds off of three. And the problem with that is, hey, if you answered question number one incorrectly, then you frame the solution incorrectly. And guess what? Answer to number two is going to be wrong, and three is going to be wrong, and four is going to be wrong, right? It's the incorrect framing of the solution. Now, I'll give you a real life business example. There was a small town barber by the name of Joe. He had run his small town barbershop for decades. He is the type of guy that knew his customers in and out. He didn't have to ask, "What are we doing with your hair today?" He already knew what his customers wanted. He knew their family members. He knew their grandkids. He knew, where they went to church on Sunday. He was that type of small town barber. And what happened was across the street, there was a national chain, one of these national chains of haircutting companies that was opening right across the street from him. And they were undercutting his business by offering $10 haircuts, less than what he was charging. It was nonetheless anxiety inducing. You can probably imagine. And he was talking with other people, his staff, his mentors, and they were all framing the problem like, well, of course, you're going to have to reduce your price. They were framing the problem in terms of price. Yeah, you're going to have to match the price or else you're going to lose all your business. Joe did something very different. He framed the issue very differently. What he did, he launched his own marketing campaign. He printed these large signs that he posted outside of his barbershop. And it said, "We fix $10 haircuts." We fix $10 haircuts. Guess what? He wasn't playing the game of race to the bottom of providing the cheapest service. Rather, he was marketing to a different consumer. We provide a different service. We provide more value. We provide a different quality of haircut than my competitors. And guess what? His customers got bad $10 haircuts and they started coming back to him. Steve Jobs. So before we get into this idea of fear, there's a few misconceptions that we have to clear up about fear. Misconception number one is that courage is the absence of fear. Not true. Not true. When we look at courageous people, maybe people that we look up to, if you ask them, "Do you experience fear?" They'll say, "Of course I do." Courage is acting in face of that fear. It's acting despite that fear. Misconception number two is we're not supposed to feel fear. We're not supposed to feel doubt. Absolutely not true. We'll talk about this on the next slide a little bit more. Feelings of fear and doubt are absolutely normal. Misconception number three, oh, he doesn't experience fear. She doesn't experience fear. He has something that I don't. I guarantee you, if there's people you look up to in the industry, in your industry, if there's mentors that you have, if you ask them, "Hey, do you still experience fear?" I bet they would say, yes, absolutely. I still get nervous. I still experience fear. There was a rock star. I don't remember who it was. The name was slipping my mind. But I remember one thing he had said. He'd been performing for decades on stage in front of stadiums and arenas, selling out crowds. And still to this day, before getting on stage, he it gets so nervous and so fearful that at sometimes he even throws up backstage right before he gets on stage, even after decades of doing it. And he said something like, if I ever get to the point where I'm not feeling this, then hey, maybe it's my time to hang up my guitar because because it's that he wants to perform his best and show up for as his best for his audience. And that's where that nervousness comes from. One of my favorite quotes is from Steve Jobs. And he says, life can be much broader once you discover one simple fact, and that is everyone around you, uh, everyone around you, your mate is made up by people that are no smarter than you. And you can change that world around you. You can influence it and you can build your own things that other people can use. Once you learn that, your world will never be the same. There's a book that I read recently, and it's quickly become one of my favorite business books, and it's called Unreasonable Hospitality by Will Guidara. Highly recommend everyone read this book, especially if you're in the food industry. Even if you're not in the food industry, it's a great read. But on page 220 of his book, he says something really profound. He said that I say this whenever someone shares their fears with me about taking that leap forward. Nobody knows what they're doing before they do it. When you're trying to level up, it's easy to psych yourself out by focusing on everything you don't know. But the fact of the matter is, no one knows what they're doing before you do it. It's through the process of doing itself that you figure it out. All right. Reframing fear. Here's a few tips when you experience that fear. Here is a quick psychological tool that you can use, a psychological reframe. It turns out that when you experience nervousness and anxiety, it's the same neurological pathway as excitement. So in other words, your brain and your body doesn't know the difference between feeling nervous and feeling excited. So reframe that anxiety, reframe that nervousness. When you feel it, instead say, I'm excited. So before this presentation, I was feeling a little nervous, but guess what? What I told myself, I'm excited. I'm excited to show up for this presentation at my best and deliver as much value as I can to this wonderful group of entrepreneurs. Everyone is going to experience fear and doubt when you're going after something big, when you're trying to help your customers, when you're trying to change your community, when you're trying to do the best for your customers and change the game, when you're going after something big, of course, you're going to feel fear and doubt. And if you're not feeling fear and doubt, then maybe you're not pushing yourself enough to your limits. Next tip I'll give is allowance, acceptance, and vulnerability. The more you show up and take action in spite of fear, the less power that fear has over you. One of my favorite quotes is feel it, don't fight it. Feel it, don't fight it. It's natural to feel fear. It's natural to feel doubt. Feel it, don't fight it. One of my favorite people, public speaker, Eric Edmeades, he said, you're only an imposter if you pretend to know something that you don't. So get comfortable with saying, look, hey, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Say, hey, I'll get back to you. I'll get back to you. And the last tool I'll give here to reframe fear is I'll offer an alternate definition to fear. And that alternate definition is face everything and rise. FEAR, face everything and rise. When you feel that self-doubt, when you feel that fear, when you feel that anxiety, that nervousness, say good. This is an opportunity for me to learn, to grow, and to challenge myself. Face everything and rise. All right. Number three, reframe failure. So we talked about filling your cookie jar. We talked about reframing your fear. Now we're going to talk about reframing failure. A lot of times what we fear most is failure. And fear of failure prevents us from taking that risk, from taking that action. So, what happens is, what does the imposter say? The imposter says, when we fail, when we fall short, oh, see, that's validation. That's validation that I wasn't meant to do this. I set a goal that I want to sell 5,000 widgets this month, and I only sell 4,500. Oh, see, that's validation that I shouldn't have done this. That's what the imposter says. No, it's the opposite. Failing is a rite of passage for entrepreneurship. It is a necessary part of the process. That brings me to my next point. Is failure necessary? I'll say a couple things. One is there's a famous iconic commercial, one of my favorite commercials of all time from Michael Jordan. And he says in this commercial, I've missed over 9,000 shots in my career. I've also lost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game winning shot and I missed. I failed over and over again in my life. And that is why I succeed. Sarah Blakely, the billionaire founder of Spanx, she shared a story that at the dinner table in front of her with her dad would ask her the same question every day. What did you fail at today? What did you fail at today? And the implication of that is, hey, if you're not failing, then you're not trying. You're not putting yourself out there. You're not taking risks. Lindsey Vonn, one of the most prolific downhill skiers of all times, had a horrific crash in one of her races. It put her in the hospital for a month. She was in rehab for 6 months, and she couldn't get back to racing for over a year. In an interview, she said, someone asked her, can you succeed without failing? And what she said was, no. She was really thoughtful. And she said, look, especially in my sport, but this is true in life as well. When you're testing your limits and pushing outside of your comfort zone, you're going to fail. She constantly pushes herself and tests the limits of her capabilities. How do you know where the edge of your capability is if you're not failing? Because she's constantly pushing that edge and toting that line. And she got back on her skis and she continued her illustrious career. To be an entrepreneur, you don't have to have everything figured out. You just have to be 1 or 2 steps ahead of those you're trying to serve. You're not going to have all the answers. You're not going to have provide the perfect solution or provide the perfect answer all the time. Own up to the fact that you don't know all the answers. But all you need to do is be 1 or 2 steps ahead of those you're trying to serve. Why? Because you can add value to their lives. Start with imperfect action and get better and better over time. Give yourself permission to keep getting better and to adapt and to adjust and iterate over time. The last story I'll leave you with is also on this point is also from this book I recently read called what's it called? Hidden Potential by Adam Grant. And in that, he has this wonderful passage called Love Newspaper Fruit. He cites this example of a polyglot. Polyglot is someone who can speak multiple languages. And this person, he tells a story of this person who speaks something like 25 different languages fluently. And this person wanted to learn a second language in high school, took Spanish class, sat down, took the lessons, did the worksheets like you do, and never learned the language. Tried to get in college. Did all the worksheets, memorized the vocabulary, nothing stuck. He resigned to the fact that, hey, I just don't have the language learning gene, until he took a different approach. He said, look, day 1, I'm going to go put myself on the streets and go speak the language. And guess what? I'm going to give myself permission to make mistakes. I don't know if there's any Spanish speakers here, but there's one mistake he made when trying to have a conversation with a Spanish speaker. He was trying to place an order in Spanish, and he said something like he wanted to order a glass of orange juice. So instead of ordering jugo de naranja, a glass of orange juice, instead he said, I'd like to order fruto de periódico, meaning I would love to order a newspaper fruit, right? Guess what? The waiter didn't point at him and criticize him. The waiter laughed. He laughed along with it. The waiter corrected him. I think what you mean is this. And guess what? He never made that mistake again. And now he speaks 26 different languages because he learned to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, putting himself out there, making the mistakes. And that is the best way to learn a language. And that's the best way to succeed in your entrepreneurial journey. Allow yourself to push your limits and to make mistakes along the way. Okay. Number four, raise your conviction. This is something I'll ask you all of you to chime in as well. Raise your conviction. One of the things I've heard from one of people that I look up to is you should have such strong conviction and belief so deeply in the product or the service that you're offering that you feel that you'll be doing a disservice by not offering that, right? So sometimes we'd be like, maybe I shouldn't make the sale. Maybe I shouldn't make the offer. But you should believe so deeply in the product that you're offering, that the service, the benefit that you can provide to this other person, that you'd be doing them a disservice by not offering it. I love that, thinking about your product or service that way. So what I'd love for all of you to do is to join me in answering these questions. And I said earlier when we talked about it, hey, why did you become an entrepreneur? You can kind of bring those thoughts to this exercise here. Who do you serve? How do you serve them? And what is their end result? There's someone in the chat who said earlier about baking, bringing happiness to people through your baking, that it brings it so much further than just I sell baked goods, right? I love that they started doing this exercise. You can tell. So answer these three questions, and I love either come off mute or put it in chat. Who do you serve? How do you serve them? And what is their end result? And while you're putting those thoughts together, it'll bring us to the second part of this exercise. Oftentimes, when someone asks you at a dinner party, what do? We kind of dilly-dally around that answer, or we don't have 100% confidence because we haven't owned up to that. Some of you may have experienced that earlier in your careers. Some entrepreneurs who started their business several years ago. Some of you may still experience that. There is a tip that I found that with 100% certainty and confidence, describe what you do and own up to the value and the service that you provide. If you can answer that question, what do? Without any fear, with full confidence, what would it be? Write that down, claim it in big, bold letters. So the second part of the exercise is what do you do? Claim it in big, bold letters. And I'd love for people to put that in chat. So I know you're probably still putting your thoughts together. Who do you serve? How do you serve them? And what is their end result after your service? And then what do? I really love to hear all of you. Theodora says, I serve homeowners and I help them make their life more functional and beautiful through design of their house. Amazing. I recently gained an appreciation for what everything architects do through my recent journey of designing a house. And through that process, they sat down with me and really got to know me as a person and understood my daily patterns. How do we design your house around you rather than you fitting your life inside of a house? And when we went through that process, I really got to know the true value of what a great architect does. And Theodora, thank you for doing that for your clients. Clinical trial sponsors, clinical trial sites, and participants. I ensure the study is being conducted according to the quality and ethical standards. Medications and devices make it onto the market and treat thousands of sufferers. Thank you, Andrea, for doing that. The work that you do is so important. You're right. People are suffering. People are going through a lot of pain, and getting them the cutting edge medications and treatment that they deserve is really important, meaningful work. And clinical trials are so important. I heard a statistic recently. You can probably speak to this better than I can, but something like 60% of clinical trials fail not because the drug didn't work, but because they couldn't find the appropriate study participants. They couldn't find the right demographics of people to appropriately study the medication, to participate in the study. I was horrified and so saddened to hear that because of the potential of the medication itself. We spread joy one sweet treat at a time. Kimberly, beautiful. I love that. I love that. We spread joy one sweet. It goes so beyond a sweet treat, right? I can't tell you how much joy it brings me and my family to go out together and enjoy as a family a sweet treat after a long week. You know, I have a 3-year-old in January. It'll be 3 and 5, and the joy it brings us to be able to bring that joy to our family. It brings memories that I can add to my cookie jar. I help business owners save time by simplifying their insurance policies and maximizing their cash flow. Beautiful, beautiful. Brings meaning and purpose to what you do. Um, Angie Richards, I'm an instructional specialist, and I grow veteran and new teachers and tutor second grade students. Okay, and what is the value? What is the end result after working with you? What is the end result that they get from that? Think through that a little bit more. And for the kind of sake of time, we will move forward through to the fifth. And this is one of my favorites. This is one of the most powerful. And this is your future self. Your future self. Think through yourself 10 years from now. 10 years from now, right? And think of that best version. You've made it, right? First of all, I challenge all of you to think through, what does that mean by made it, right? That person from 5 years from now, 10 years from now, they've made it. Define that. What does that mean? I've made it. I know I've made it when I can quit my job because my business is taken off. I know I've made it when I have helped bring joy to 100,000 customers. I know I've made it when whatever it is, right? Define made it, right? And share it in chat if you know what that is today. Now, that person that's made it 5 years from now, 10 years from now, zoom out for a second and think of that, the qualities of the 3 qualities that defines that person that has made it. How is it that this person dresses? How does this person carry themselves? How do they communicate? Think through that. Get to know this person so intimately and so well. Why? Because guess what? This person is no other than yourself. And this person is someone you can access at any given time. I'll give you an example. January mentioned earlier that I'm an amateur podcaster. And we wanted to, me and my podcast co-host, my best friends since 5th grade, we wanted to invite a guest onto our podcast. And this guest was a big time in the industry. And guess what? The self-doubt started creeping up in my mind. Who am I to invite this big time person to be a guest on my podcast? And I asked my future self, the one that's made it, hey, give me advice. Help me coach through the situation. My ideal self, the person who is confident, the person who is charismatic, the person who is a world-class podcaster. Advise me. What should I do in this situation? And then the answer became really easy. Make the ask. What's the worst that can happen? Ask them, hey, I'd love for 20 minutes of your time for you to be a guest on my podcast. Here's my audience. Here's the value we like to participate. And I really think you'd provide a lot of value to my audience. What's the worst that can happen? He says, hey, no, sorry, it's not a right fit at this time. Follow back up with me in 6 months. Great. I'll follow back up in 6 months. Dust it off. No problem. I get a no. Let's move on. But I'm glad I did this exercise, my future self, because I reached out and the person was happy to be a guest on my podcast, and we were able to partner on a podcast episode. I know I've made it when my desserts are being sold nationwide. That's fantastic. That's fantastic, right? That person, that entrepreneur that has done that has made it nationwide. What are the behaviors? What are the habits that they have? How do they carry themselves? What are the 3 qualities that describe that person? And start living into that today. Start asking that person for advice. Now, you might ask, well, Dr. Ram, isn't that faking it until you make it? No, I wouldn't say that's faking it till you make it, because you're not behaving like someone other than yourself. You're tapping into the best version of yourself. This is believing until you achieve, believing in your own self. Again, when I have self-doubt, when I don't believe in myself, I ask for mentorship for my future self, for my ideal version. Hey, what would you do? And oftentimes the answer becomes crystal clear. When I could say no to smaller projects and concentrate on the few large design focused projects a year. I love that, right? It's a luxury to be able to say no, to focus on just the projects that you want to. That's fantastic. Okay, so here's the exercise. Again, you'll get these notes as well. How do you know you've made it? Describe the three qualities of that person that's made it. Get to know that person. Talk to them daily. Talk to them on a regular basis. Talk to them when you're feeling that voice of doubt creeping up. All right. This is a fun exercise. Okay. And I'd ask all of you to do it along with me. This is a fun exercise, and it's equally fun as well as effective. Give your imposter a name. All that self-doubt, those voices, we all know what that voice sounds like. We've experienced it. We all know what that voice feels like. We've all felt it before. Here's the example I'll give to explain this. Most people have that crazy kind of auntie or uncle in their family that they like spew all these crazy conspiracy theories, or they have all these, weird philosophies on life, that auntie Sally, or that, Mr. Johnson, or down the street, right? We've probably all met these people, and you let them be kind of be them themselves. But when they talk, you're like, oh, that's just crazy Auntie Sally speaking. That's just crazy Mr. Johnson speaking. And we don't provide value. We don't provide a lot of meaning to what they're saying, because we know, hey, some of their theories and their ideas are out there. I'll give you another example. I have a 3-year-old daughter. I have a 5-year-old daughter as well. One thing that they have become scary good at, is weaponizing emotions. I'll give you an example. Mommy, daddy, can we have a cookie? So, sweetie, I don't want to give you a cookie right now. Maybe because we're about to have dinner. I don't want you to ruin your appetite. Daddy, you're not my friend anymore. You're not my friend anymore. Daddy, did you even love me? Did you ever love me? Like, they have become scary good at like weaponizing these emotions. But do I take it to heart? Do I take it seriously? Of course not. They're 3 years old and 5 years old. They're 2 and 4 now, and just in a couple of months they'll be 3 and 5. Right? These I have to remind myself. My 3-year-old's potty training right now, and when I take her to go potty, she has to use the restroom, and she'll look up at me with this cutest little eyes and says, "Daddy, my butt isn't working. My butt's not working," and it's adorable. So the same child that weaponizes emotions is also the one that says, "Daddy, my butt's not working." It's so adorable, right? You take it with a grain of salt. Like that. Give your imposter a name. And when those feelings of self-doubt comes up, when those feelings of that voice comes up in the back of your head, separate it from who you are. Oh, that is just, I don't know, Steven speaking, whatever you want to call it. That's just silly Billy speaking, right? And dismiss it like you would that crazy Mr. Johnson. Dismiss it like you would a 3-year-old saying some emotionally damaging statement, and treat it that way, right? It's not who I am. That's just silly Billy speaking. So I want everyone to give their imposter a name, right? Whatever it might be. Give your imposter a name and put it in chat. Take it a minute or two and give your imposter a name. And when you feel those feelings of self-doubt, when you feel those feelings of fear or those voice of imposter syndrome coming up, you can be like, that's just Cruella de Vil speaking. That's just Slimy Shirley speaking. Oh, these are so good. You guys are great. You guys are so, this is amazing. These are really good names, right? And again, the value of this is creating a separation between who you are and who this doubting self is, who this imposter is. You're not the imposter. That is someone other than you. It's a voice in your head that you need to learn to disempower and separate from yourself. Scary Mary. I love that. Um, and there's an exercise as well. The opposite is true. That future self, you can give a name. So, for example, oftentimes before a speech, I am my name is Ramesh. My family calls me Ramesh, and I go by Ram for short. And my best self, my person 5 years from now, my ideal self 10 years from now, is Dr. Ram. How would Dr. Ram speak up in this situation? How does Dr. Ram show up? And I kind of breathe into that and feel what that feels like before speaking in front of an audience. Scary Mary, Slimy Shirley. I love these, right? And these are silly names, but guess what? Your imposter is also silly. And when you realize that it is silly, it disempowers it. It takes the thorns out and the power out of what of your imposter. All right. The last and final, last but not least, is choose faith over fear. Choose faith over fear. I'll leave you with a few different stories here. And this is one that is constantly in the back of my head. Simple example, I was preparing for the speech, and even me, I'm like, is this going to deliver value to anyone? Is anyone going to benefit from this? Guess what? It was my voice of imposter sprouting up. And the way I combated it was choosing faith over fear. Faith that I have value to give. I have a message that can hopefully improve the lives of those who I'm speaking with. I chose faith over fear. There's a story that I heard about fleas. Fleas in a jar. There's a group of scientists that perform this experiment. They put fleas inside of a jar, and fleas do what fleas do. They jumped out of the jar. It turns out fleas can jump 32 inches despite being a tiny little creature. They can jump almost 3 feet tall. So you put them inside of a jar, they do what fleas do. They jumped out of that jar. The scientists took that experiment one step further. They put a limitation on that jar. They put a cap on that jar. The fleas started hitting the top of that jar. They got beat down by that limitation. They got beat down by that lid on that jar. Just after a day of this, the scientists took out the lid off the jar. There's no more limitation, but these fleas learn the behavior and they only jump to the height of the lid, even though the lid wasn't there anymore. Now take it one step further. These fleas started having children. These children observed their parents and they only jumped to the height of the jar. They never learned the true capability of what they were capable of, even though they never experienced that being beaten down by that lid. There's a reason why when you get in a car that the windshield is much bigger than the rear view mirror, because what's way more important than where you came from is where you're going. And the only limitations that we set for ourselves, the only limitations we have are the ones we set for ourselves. A second story I'll leave you with is there's a story of an entrepreneur, much like many of you. He told the story of when he was 17 years old. He did something like every 17-year-old does. He took the SATs. And he wasn't the best student. He kind of skated his way through school. He was on the all F honor roll, just barely skating by with C's and D's and sometimes getting some F's. But he was told that he needed to take this SATs, so he took it. A few weeks after taking the SATs, he got a letter in the mail by the college board. And he opened this letter and it said he scored a 1580 on this exam. A 1580, which is a fantastic score. Immediately, his mom thought he cheated. Did you cheat on this exam? No, mom, I promise. I didn't cheat on this exam. And then a thought crossed his mind. Maybe I've been smart this entire time and I didn't even realize it. The rest of his junior year, he started applying himself. He turned in all his homework assignments. He studied for exams. He finished his senior year on the all A honor roll. He applied to college, started a community college, got all A's, transferred to a larger larger university. He went on to start his own business, and now he's a multi-millionaire. Now, several years after he got that first letter from the college board, he got a second letter. And this letter said something very different. This letter said, you were one of 10 students that year to get the wrong SAT score. It turns out he didn't get a 1580. Instead, he got a 740. So what changed his life wasn't this SAT score. It was a belief in himself, a belief in his capabilities. We are all much more capable than we can even imagine. It's up to us to realize that and to live into that. The last thing I'll leave you with is the idea of getting comfortable with being uncomfortable and choosing faith over fear. Have faith in what, you might ask? Have faith in the teams that you work with. Have faith in the community that you serve and support. Have faith in the purpose and the mission that you serve. And most importantly, have faith in yourself that when given the opportunity to serve at a higher capacity, that you will rise to the occasion. And when faced with challenges and setbacks, you will figure it out. One of my friends, Sanjeev Gupta, he says something really profound. He says, don't play the game of someday. Someday I'll start a business. Someday I'll put myself out there. Someday I'll do this. Don't play the game of someday. Play the game of today. Don't wait for courage to take action, but take action and let courage catch up. With that, I want to thank all of you again for this wonderful opportunity to speak to you. And I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. And it's I'm so grateful for this opportunity to speak to aspiring and for current entrepreneurs. And I'm happy to answer any questions at this time.
All right, you guys are able to unmute yourselves. If you raise your hand, I'll give you guys a call out. We do have a couple bits of information. So I'll say this, please don't hop off because we want to make sure you hear about what's coming up.
What podcast books do you recommend? So many. So there's a couple that I recommended earlier today. Unreasonable Hospitality is one that I recommended. Atomic Habits is one of my favorites. It's a simple, no nonsense kind of like method of how to build habits and how to get rid of bad habits. One of my other favorite is The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. Amazing book. Again, no nonsense approach of like building daily habits and the value of sticking with it. And also podcasts. Darren Hardy has a wonderful podcast. And it's a daily podcast because look, a lot of these ideas, we have to continuously imbue and put our mind positive thoughts into our mind, not once a week, not once a month, but daily. There's another podcast I listen to called Heroic by Brian Johnson. If you're not familiar with Brian Johnson, has a fantastic platform called Heroic. He puts out a daily podcast where he also talks about positivity, mindset habits, things like that. Great resources, great podcasts. There's a couple that come to mind. I also have a podcast, the Unlimited Potential Show. Feel free to check it out, where we talk about success, mindset, and leadership best practices. Faith over fear. Love that. Brian Johnson's great. Yeah, isn't he awesome? Yeah, he's who I aspire to be, right? He's fantastic. He's definitely one of my mentors. And you get access to his knowledge on a daily basis through his podcast and through his writings and through his platform.
All right. I want to thank Dr. Ram. He has done an amazing job. So if you guys
I can't hear you, January.
For what you've done today and what you presented to us. And I'm sure some of you guys still have some questions that you want to ask. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and get the few remaining obligatory slides out of the way. And then maybe if you've got some questions and you guys want to come off mute at the end, you can ask Dr. Ram your questions directly. So just want to give you guys a couple quick reminders that again, we are doing 5 of these. You've already, missed out on 3 of them, even though I do see some names that are familiar. Tonight was number 4 with Dr. Ram about silencing self-doubt. Anytime you want to see what we have going on, or you need to catch a recording that you missed, or you just need to, find out some other tools or presentations or things that we have, everything is always in one place, and that's on the link tree. So you can take a picture or scan the QR code, or you can go to www.linktree/speaker series. Yes, there is a dot in the middle of the word tree. I don't know why it's there, but that dot is to point you in the right direction. So that's Linktree, linktr.ee/speaker series. That's an important place to get everything you need all in one place, but it's super, super, super important for what we have going on next week. Next week, we have not one, but 2 ways for you guys to engage with us. We are going to be hosting Franchising 101, Unlocking the Blueprint to Business Success. The 2 people who are coming in, that's right, not one, but 2 speakers who are going to either join you in person or online if you can't make it in person. I'm going to talk to you all about whether or not you need to A, consider starting a business from scratch, or B, going into a franchise model. This is super important for those of you who already have businesses, because some of you may be thinking about opening or spinning off your business and having franchises. These 2 know it all. I can't even wait to go over their accolades with you. I'm going to let you tell them. But again, you have 2 opportunities to engage with these 2 individuals. That is correct. You can join us in person. They're bringing in catering, and I wonder why they're bringing in catering. You'll find out more when you get there. But it is a free catered dinner workshop next Thursday, November 21st. Doors open at 5:30. Not able to beat that traffic? Need to listen in online? Don't worry. The Zoom line will open at 6 o'clock, and you won't miss anything except a hot meal. So we hope that you can join us for either one of those options where you get to see these 2 individuals talk about franchising 101. Now, some of you guys may say, but I'm not interested in franchising. That's not my business model. That's okay. We want to understand what your business model is. So for that reason, the Dallas College Venture Club is offering a growth opportunity for you to get one-on-one conversations, personalized advice, and optimized growth for your business. That's right. You get a free, that's right, no cost, private conversation with an expert that can help you develop your business model, reach your financial goals by outlining those and setting strategic steps, and then also understand the story that your revenue is telling you. So if you are interested in starting or growing your business, scan this QR code. There's a spoiler alert. It's going to take you to the Linktree with the dot between the R and the E's /speaker series. That's right. How much does all of this cost? Nothing, because it is taken care of for you. So we do want to thank Dr. Ram again and give him a huge thank you. Huge thank you. But we're going to stop sharing right now, and we're going to allow him to come on camera full screen. In case you guys have any other questions, we still have about 10 minutes. If you guys have anything that you would like to know from Dr. Ram, come off mute and feel free to ask or put it in the chat. And I think there are already a couple of things that are in the chat for you to answer, Dr. Ram. So if you'll stay on, everybody else, thank you for joining us. And you guys are welcome to hop off. And hopefully we'll see you next week, either in person or online. Bye, everybody. And for those of you staying on, Dr. Ram, come on back on camera and help these people out because they've got questions.
Absolutely. I'm here. And then January, you might need to, you cannot start your video because the host, you might need to re-enable my video, but if you can do that on your end. But I see a couple questions here. Is there any way to handle not wanting to be seen as a serial entrepreneur when trying out different business ideas? I don't want friends to think I'm always starting something new. A couple of things is that one of the advice I got recently is before starting a business, test it out, right? Like, hey, what do you think of this idea? Right. And would you create an offer? And hey, I'd love to sit down with you and kind of test this offer with you and then see kind of what you think. Would you buy this service? right? And they say no. Okay, well, no worries. What would it take? How do I get to the offer I am at today to where you would want to purchase, to where you'd be like, heck yes, I definitely want to buy this offer. And kind of getting to the bottom of that. Oftentimes, entrepreneurs don't do that discovery process, don't do that kind of like that discovery process to adapt what their product is to what people are looking for. They kind of assume that, hey, I have something that people want, and then they build it out and they spend a lot of money and a lot of time doing that without doing that market research, without asking, hey, is this something that people want? Is this something that people can benefit from? Do I have the proper messaging to be able to convey the value that I can offer? Right. And it's that market testing. There's an example that I heard of that back in the day, I don't remember the name of the gentleman, but he started the Palm Pilot, if I'm dating myself, but back before cell phones and smart devices and all these things, there was like PDAs, personal digital assistant, right? And Palm Pilot was one of the originals. And what he did was he literally drew out on a notepad exactly what that Palm Pilot would look like. And he put it on like this block of wood that was the same form factor as what he would imagine what his thing was going to be like. Right. And he would put it in his pocket and he would pretend like, okay, hey, I got to check my calendar. So he would pretend like he was pulling it out and would flip to that page to kind of get an idea of what it would be like to experience this. And through that process, he was able to realize, hey, this is not going to work. This is really going to work. He was able to iterate that product and come up with a final product that was a smash hit at the time. Going back to your question in terms of being seen as a serial entrepreneur, trying out different business ideas. What's wrong with being seen as a serial entrepreneur? I would kind of reframe the question as itself. I know several serial entrepreneurs that have bought businesses, that have started businesses, that have sold businesses, and are very successful. And I admire them for putting themselves out there. Right? Is that an identity that you want for yourself? Is what I'd ask you. Right? Do you want to have that? Do you want someone to be known as a serial entrepreneur? Right? I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. And if there's kind of a negativity that surrounds that, then that's more of I have follow up questions for you. Right? I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Maybe reframing the way you think about being a serial entrepreneur is perhaps an exercise to consider. Yeah, I don't want friends to think I'm always starting something new. Yeah, I mean, kind of before starting something new, do that discovery process, right? And do that market research and ask those questions to see if what your idea can add value to others, and if the kind of pitch, the marketing efforts that you want to put out there resonates with your ideal customer. Scrolling through the chat to see if there's any questions that I missed.
All right, I think you got them all, Dr. Ram. I think you are good to go. So with that being said, I don't see any more questions. We want to thank you for your time this evening. We want to thank you for listening intently. We want to thank you for the questions you posed. And most of all, we want to thank you for taking that step toward overcoming imposter syndrome. We can't wait to see what happens next. Thank you, guys. We are excited, and we will catch you the next time. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Bye, everyone.